Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of the Broadreach podcast. And this episode is just a quick update of the great news that Kirsten has come in and won the Golden Globe race, which is an incredible achievement. Kirsten has done it in 235 days, 5 hours and 44 minutes. And she broke loads of speed records as she came in. Simon came in before Kirsten, but we know Simon is Chichester class, but Simon, what an achievement from Simon as well. So we've Simon home, Kirsten home, and Abhilash has just come home in the last few hours as well. And he's in second place in the GGR overall. Incredible news. And Kirsten, we're just going to focus on Kirsten in this update. And we're going to come back to Simon and Abhilash because Kirsten has won the overall race. She's the first ever woman to do it. What an amazing achievement. 39-year-old from South Africa. And she actually came in on Freedom Day, the National Freedom Day in South Africa, which is incredible. Like you couldn't write it. And she came in, she broke out the flares. There was an amazing reception for Kirsten. We might share some footage here of Kirsten coming in as we talk about her. Sean, do you want to share your screen there?
Yeah, look, it's incredible footage, this, and there's a couple of some really interesting points that obviously amazing for Kirsten to come in first, but some very interesting points that came up in the press conference after she won. She only found out she was in first position 7 miles out from the finish.
Yeah,
she had no clue.
It's amazing.
So she was winning the race. She rounded Cape Horn first. Remember, we did that post on it a long time ago with the video clip. And then Abhilash passed her out at some point, took the lead at least for a couple of days. Then that weather system came in. He needed to kind of go east to avoid that. And that gave Kirsten the opportunity again to take the lead again. So it kind of changed hands a couple of times. And we talked about it in our last update. But then in the last week, she's pretty much been extending her lead, sailing really, really fast. She talked about knowing that she was coming towards the end and she was doing like her average speeds were absolutely incredible. So yeah, but only finding out 7 miles out, I just couldn't believe that. So what happened was as she was approaching the wind dropped completely and she was kind of drifting around for a few hours. Boats started to come out from Les Sables d'Olonne and they told her, look, you're in first. And she couldn't believe it. So it's just some incredible, it's incredible news for her, obviously, to receive. A couple of other really interesting things that came up during the press conference. She was asked what was the hardest part about the entire race, and she said it was getting to the starting line. So 80% was preparation before the race actually started, and then doing the race itself then was obviously a challenge in itself, but getting to the starting line and being prepared was key. She also talked about doing as much of the refitting of the boat yourself rather than getting somebody else in to do it. And the reason for that is when she had issues with stuff breaking, she knew exactly how to fix them herself because she had fitted those parts or set up those things.
It's amazing, Sean. She slept in the boat the first night she was back. She said it's my home. Boat. Do you want to talk a small bit about the boat, Sean? Just tell us everything you know about it. I know it's Cape George 36, right?
Yeah, and
it's a heavy boat.
Yeah, it's a heavy boat, and like she chose that specifically for the race. And it's different to the other boats, some which are were said to be lighter and more suitable to actually win the race. But I think she talks about doing a shakedown sail, which is kind of like a test run or sea trials. She sailed down to Cape Town and then she sailed back up to France. And people were questioning that, but she said it was crucial to understand exactly the idiosyncrasies of each boat, because every boat is different. You need to set up the sails differently, different tension of the rig. There's so many different little individual things that make a boat unique, and she had to figure that stuff out, and she found that was massive for allowing her to set up the boat for success for the race. She had people helping her as well, and she mentions some people who helped her refit and choose the boat as well. So, obviously having the right team around you is really important. She did actually mention that she will need to sell the boat, which is really sad. She talks about that at the end, because obviously it's an expensive thing to do, to raise the money to do a race like this. And I do know there are GoFundMe pages for Kirsten and for the other skippers, so we'll stick a link to those once we get the post up. We'll do a round up of all of those maybe next week, where we gather all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I think that's often not understood about this race, is that it costs a lot of money to raise a boat to sail around the world, and there's so many, from accommodation to setting up your teams to getting food, fuel, buying the boat, and all of the safety equipment to refit the boat. It just, as well as your own time, the costs are in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah,
so
it's enormous. It's enormous.
Yeah.
We just want to say huge congratulations from us. It's been brilliant doing this podcast. And Kirsten's team, who are in charge of her social media, have been really accommodating to us, and we just want to say thanks as well. And hopefully we can reach out, maybe get an interview with Kirsten down the road. I'm sure she's very busy at the moment, but massive congratulations to Kirsten. What a legend! This is folklore, I'm very surprised, Sean, that it hasn't been more in the international media, to be honest.
It doesn't make sense. It's the ultimate story. We talked about this throughout our podcast, Shane. It's a circumnavigation. It's a circular story. She had all of these trials and tribulations on the way. Picked Tapio. It's just so many things.
Rescue.
Yeah, we were talking about this off air. Somebody asked, what books did you have with you? And the first two books she mentioned were Jean-Luc's book. Jean-Luc won the 2018 race, and Tapio's book in Finnish. She had Tapio's book in Finnish. She had Jean-Luc's book. Let's just think about that for a second. She won the race, so she's following the footsteps of Jean-Luc, and she picked Tapio up. She rescued Tapio up.
Yeah.
And the book was in Finnish as well, so she can speak some Finnish. And she picked him up and saved him and offloaded him to a container ship, continued on the race and won the race. Didn't even need the additional time differential that she acquired for that rescue. She acquired some extra fuel and compensation and some time, but she didn't need it in the end. Just to maybe continue on the reference to the other skippers, there's some really nice messages as well from Pat Lawless, from Passage Guardian, Tapio, Guy de Boer, just congratulating Kirsten. Everybody's delighted. I mean, I think for everybody to achieve getting around, like for Simon, Abhilash, and of course Gug and Jeremy as well, for everybody, touch wood, that does actually get around safely, it's an unbelievable achievement.
Yeah, it's incredible. And Simon was described, we're just to remind people again, we're going to come back to Simon and Abhilash, because what they've done is equally as incredible, but Kirsten has won the overall race. So we just wanted to focus on Kirsten. But just to mention one thing, Simon, he did, when Don described him, what was your kind of scariest moment, he was describing coming through thick fog, surrounded by massive ships, and he could hear the engines. I think that was near Cape Finisterre. And just Abhilash coming in, and when he got off the boat, after being greeted at Les Abdelon, someone had a laptop, and it was the general of the Indian Navy giving him a message, and it was quite an emotional moment for Abhilash. There's just so many stories, like we've said before, but Kirsten's story is immense, and the fact that she saved someone's life in the middle of the race. We don't want to see her sell her boat. That would be heartbreaking. That is her home. She loves that boat so much.
Yeah, look, totally agree, Shane. And she did have her challenges on the race as well. There was another point that came up during the press conference as well. She was asked what's the lowest point of the race, and I thought it was really apt that she mentioned that the lowest point was the doldrums. Hence the expression stuck in the doldrums. Now I really understand why that expression exists, because she really was at a low point there, and she was pretty much drifting around for the guts of 2 weeks. And there's one diagram I want to show you before we finish up today, which actually illustrates that very well. When she was moving, when she was stuck. But I just thought it was very apt that the lowest point in the race was the doldrums, and her kind of expression was, where somebody asked, well, what do you do when you're at your lowest points? And she said, well, you just got to get out of the doldrums. And I just thought that's a really nice life lesson. You got to find a cloud, find a breath of wind. That's what she said. And I just thought that was a beautiful kind of proxy for how, you know, for life, that we, you know, there's got to be a way out when you're stuck. She also talked about swimming around the boat in the doldrums as being kind of a way to escape the difficulties that she was facing, because it's a notoriously difficult mental challenge being stuck in the doldrums when there's no wind. And I think the belief is that the wind is never going to come, and people really start questioning their own decisions, questioning, why did I go this way, why did I not go east, why did I not go west, why did I take this route, you start to question yourself, and it feels like the wind's never going to come. And of course they don't have the tracker like we do, where we're like, just hang on for 5 days. There's a massive southwesterly or southeasterly coming in. It feels like it's never going to come. So she was swimming in around the boat, like swimming quite a distance in the boat. And I can't like, everything I've ever known is like, stay with the boat, stay on the boat, don't even get off it. It's like, I think Don mentioned it. She's one of the sailors that's at one with the boat. Yes. And which is why she slept in it, right, on the last night.
Yeah, you can tell by the way she talked about the boat, like it's like a family member, you know. But that's it. And she described, somebody in the press conference asked her, would you have any advice for people preparing for GGR? And she was kind of saying, try and do as much of the work yourself as you can, because you literally know every knot and bolt of the boat, and something that Pat Lawless talked to us about as well, you know. And Motissier referenced his book, you just start to become one with the boat. You know when it creaks a little differently, you're like, okay, you can nearly tell a current or you know, at one point you can, at a stage from being so long in the boat, you can tell every creak and every noise. So yeah, look, it's an incredible achievement, like we've said before, and I think it's going to only grow in popularity. You know, you've got this documentary coming up from the GGR are advertising it, The Voyage of Madmen. That's all about the 2018 race. I think, you know, that's probably going to end up on Netflix or something. It's a story that people are going to be drawn to, and look, we're going to be here for the next one as well. And don't worry, all our viewers, you can stay with us. We'll keep the content coming.
Yeah, like just on that, Shane, I mean, particularly in the last 2 weeks, there's been a massive ramp up in the numbers of people that have been tuning in. And just as you said, you know, we're going to finish the rest of the race. We're going to be here every week doing an update until the last person is in, and then we'll figure out exactly how we're going to move forward. But absolutely, just to reassure people, we will be, and hopefully we'll get some of the skippers on again, some more skippers to actually interview and talk to. So stay tuned. As a couple of other things, Shane, I want to mention in relation to Kirsten's kind of being at one with the boat. She talked about when she was navigating down the South Atlantic. Remember, she went towards the coast of Brazil as she was approaching Trinidad, where other people went closer to Trinidad. She went close to the coast of Brazil. She said that she descended the South Atlantic by feel.
Oh my God! Yeah, she's a pro. She's such a pro. Like,
I couldn't believe that. Now, she did have the Ocean Passages of the World book. It's a big book, which I was looking up after she mentioned it. I know Don had mentioned it before. That was how she figured out her route up the North Atlantic, because she said that was the most challenging piece of navigation, to get from Cape Horn back to the Bay of Biscay. It's like, you know, do you go east? Do you go west? Do you hug the South African or the South American coast? Or do you stay in the middle, or do you go further east? And she said she actually should have gone further east, which is what her instinct were initially, but then she changed and it ended up not working out. But look, she got here in the end and got there first. She also talked about the barnacle issue. So I was counting this up. She had to jump overboard and scrape off barnacles. I'm just counting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 7 times. I've counted it. So in the Canary Islands, she started. Then in Trinidad, she started doing some more. And that's basically just so people are wondering, why would you be scraping off barnacles? What's the big deal? It's to allow the boat to go faster, to keep it smooth, like the wing of an airplane or like a Formula One car. So it's aerodynamic and moving smoothly through the water. So when you have barnacles, you can lose quite a lot of speed, up to a knot more, 2 knots. And it's put people out of the race. When she was in the Southern Ocean, she dived 3 times. She said she was close to hypothermic each time. She was a total of 8 hours in the water and only had to stop due to the cold. That wasn't a nice experience. But one thing she also mentions is that she had to heave too. I think that's something that's come up a couple of times. It's basically a way of positioning the boat so that the pressure on the mainsail and the foresails are kind of cancelling each other out, and the boat is kind of somewhat stopped in the water or drifting very slowly. But like to go in and dive while the boat is hove to like that, I just can't imagine, because the fear of the boat kind of swinging around and taking off for me would be too much. So I just think like the fact that she did spend 8 hours in the Southern Ocean overboard cleaning off barnacles. I mean, this is the level that she's at. Unbelievable. She is tough. Yeah. And then when she got back to the horse latitudes in the South Atlantic, as she was stuck, remember she was stuck for the first time, she jumped overboard and like started polishing the boat to make it like very, very, very smooth. So that it was almost like the boat was on land, in that she was polishing it on the dock. So that's probably helped her get those unbelievable speeds, like 7, 8 knots as she was coming into the Bay of Biscay. She also talks about the hydrovane. So we got to give a shout out to the hydrovane, because the hydrovane had a lot of, it was being questioned, shall we say, because people had issues with it. But remember, we talked about a lot of the issues were to do with the weather, or there was maybe human error in some cases, or issues that were out of the control of the weather vane itself. Like, for example, in Ian's case, it was the drogue that got caught up in the hydrovane. Kirsten said the hydrovane was amazing. That's what she said. There were a couple of small fixes that she had to do, some MacGyver work with zip ties and duct tape. But other than that, it worked fine.
Yeah, it's good to hear a good, positive hydrovane story in the GGR.
Yeah. There was one other thing she talked about in terms of heavy weather sailing. So some people use drogues, some people towed warps. She said that she took Robin Knox Johnson's advice, which was to use one long warp, but in a bite. Like, how do I explain this? It's like, it's a loop, so it's coming out from one side of the boat and it's going way back into the sea in a loop and coming back to the other, like they're both coming off the stern of the boat, but one is on the port side, one is on the starboard side, and it's one loop going back into the sea. So the loop the total length of rope was 140 meters. So you're kind of getting 2 40-meter lengths and then a loop joining them. That's what she used. And it worked really well. And she had only one situation where the boat turned what's called broadside to the waves. So where essentially the waves are coming from the side, which is that's the danger point for rolling the boat over. So it seemed to work out really well. And like those things are really interesting. We've talked to all the skippers we have spoken to, Shane. We've asked them specifically about heavy weather sailing. What were their tactics? And Guy DeBoer had his view. Pat had his view. Now we know Kirsten's view. So we're getting through the list of everybody and what they did. We know what Ian did as well with the drogue. It just there was a complication there, and it's really good intel and good knowledge to understand what worked and what didn't work for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody's got their own tactics. Guy DeBoer mentioned tires and stuff. But yeah, she's a phenomenal tactician, her Kirsten. You know, she got the both record speeds, record averages. So congratulations again to Kirsten. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me from this week, Shane. I think there's one thing I'd like to share before we wrap up, which is an image from the GGR Underground, from Jonathan in the GGR Underground. And I don't know if you've seen this, but I would like to share the screen. So if we can just throw that on screen there whenever you're ready, Colm. So have you seen this, Shane?
I have, yeah. He's actually producing them as posters, which is really exciting.
Yeah, we'd love to get one of these. So we'll definitely be looking for one of these. I don't know if he can stick them up online that we can buy them as a poster. Would be incredible. We'd like to do that because I think it would be great to support Jonathan. His work has been phenomenal. And we've been following and giving updates from GGR Underground every week that we've done this podcast. And it's given us a really, like, the visual and the color for me is fantastic. So what are we showing? These are essentially the average
4-hour speed logs, I think, aren't they?
Yeah. That Kirsten had over the entire race. So you can see here September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So at the very start, you can see the trouble they had getting out of the Bay of Biscay, which is why the speeds are really low in the red and the amber. And then they started to gather speed. Here's Lanzarote. So you can actually see the approach to the Canary Islands was pretty good. Northerly winds possibly. Slowed down after Lanzarote, and then, you know, it just goes on and on and on. The equator, Trinidad. And you can see then this is after Tapio's rescue. She really was flying. And remember, she actually caught up to Simon to within 100 miles of Simon as we were approaching Hobart. So that green represents that phenomenal catch up that she had. And Simon got stuck as we approached Hobart, and she caught up to within 80 or 100 miles, I think it was. And then he took off again until he had the issue with the hydroplane. But yeah, look, that just as the last point, I just thought that was a really nice way to.
Yeah, look, that's incredible, striking image as well. So that's fantastic. Look, we'll come back and catch up with Abhilash and Simon on the next episode. And this was just this episode was just basically to say congratulations to Kirsten. It's been amazing following it and doing this podcast about it. So the GGR 2022 has been won by Kirsten Neuschäfer, and a legend is born. So thanks to all our new viewers as well. Thanks so much. We got loads of hits on the last episode. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we'll see you for the next one.
Cheers, Shane. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks, folks.